that in just a little bit. Tony Caridi, voice of West Virginia Athletics, joins us on 365 Sports. Tony, thank you very much. I know you're always busy. Your thoughts about West Virginia post-spring football?
Well, as you know, you go into the spring game, and the number one objective is not to get anybody hurt. And they were able to do that. So the biggest thing that stood out to me, fortunately, knock on wood, no injuries whatsoever. The athletic trainers never made it onto the field once the entire afternoon. That's a win. And the other stunner, one penalty the entire day. And I mean, they're officiating it for real, right? It's Big 12 crew, and so they're officiating it for real. So we were wondering if we could just take that crew and travel with them for the upcoming season. Every just kind of, make them like the road band. But anyway, so where we are is at quarterback. It's a two-person race between Garrett Green and Nico. And Neal Brown said before practice in the spring ever started that he was not going to make a final call until in August. And at this point, in one particular scrimmage there Saturday, Green was the more advanced quarterback. Whether or not that plays out for the rest of the offseason and into this upcoming season remains to be seen. The team is very deep at running back. Legitimately, you've got four guys on that roster who have all had 100-yard games. So that's the strength of the offense in regard to skill. And then the offensive line, this is year 5 for Neal. And when he took this program over, the offensive line was in as bad of a shape as I had seen in my tenure here. And this will be my 40th season coming up. They started from zero, and now they are very good on the offensive line. They've got several guys, 2 guys in particular that will be in the NFL, the starting left side tackle, Wyatt Milam, and the starting center, Zach Frazier. So this will be a run-dominated team. And the 2 quarterbacks that I mentioned also have the ability to attack the perimeter, which we have not had in a long time here. And that's the kind of team it's going to be, kind of like in a day of throw it all over the place. This is going to be a run-dominated team. Receiving core completely reversed from where they were a year ago. We lost all the top names, and so we've hit the portal, as you know. We've hit the portal, got some guys coming in there, and that'll be a work in progress. And on the defensive side, I think they have got the opportunity to be solid after a really disappointing year last season.
Tony, is there a big difference in skill sets between the 2 quarterbacks? If one of them wins or one of them gets hurt and comes in, do they have to change it? Or, because I know Green is an excellent runner. We have not seen his aerial game come just yet, but is there going to be that shift in the offense if it's one or the other?
No, there wouldn't be. They would be able to run the same stuff for both of those guys. I think Garrett is, really, really fast. Nico doesn't have that speed, but Nico has that ability to get out of the pocket and do enough damage. So he's not Garrett Green, and for that matter, he's not a speedster, but he's a guy that has football savvy that can get out of the pocket, get down, make yards, play the next play.
Tony, I'd imagine it's impossible to not hear some outside noise at this point if you're Neal Brown coming out of last season. He seems like such a likable guy, and it's what you hear a lot, but clearly people want results, and they haven't seen the type of results they want up until this point. How has he approached this spring and handled all that kind of talk, if it at all as he had to handle that kind of a talk? And how do you just feel like he's approached this spring with this roster and the optimism they have?
I think he's approached it extremely professional, and obviously I think he would be the first person to agree with your initial point that this game and these jobs are all determined by wins, and I think that he knows that, and he understands what's in front of him. And so I don't feel or sense any extra stress or forlorn, behavior on his part. As you said, I mean, just the most likable, nicest guy you could ever come across. But he knows that you've got to win games. And, we've talked about this, I think, in the past. Schedule-wise, he's been given zero easy things to do. We were one of 2 teams in the country the last couple of years that are playing 11 Power 5 games. It happens again this year. Last year we opened at Pitt. 2 years ago we opened at Maryland. This year we open at Penn State, and then 2 weeks later we play Pitt. And so that's not smart scheduling. I said it back a decade ago when these schedules were put in place that West Virginia's over its skis. Don't need to do it because no one else is doing it in college football. And so he's starting, with some really super tough challenges to begin with. It doesn't make it easy, and then you jump into the league. So this year, with the new additions, West Virginia and Oklahoma State are the only two teams that are playing all four of the newcomers. And so you've got that unknown in regard to how do you do? You're not playing the two Kansases, you're not playing Iowa State, and you're not playing Texas. So can you make your money off of BYU, off of Houston, UCF, and Cincinnati? That remains to be seen.
You mentioned they want to be a run-first team. You got a quarterback that can help you with that as well because he's a tough kid in Green. But I saw obviously Donaldson, Johnson, Mathis, Jaheim White, a freshman out of Pennsylvania, had a big run in that game. Is he someone that might give him a little something else? Looks like a small version, but a guy that has a little pop.
Yeah, it's a really good point. So obviously that was the first time that I saw him in progress there on Saturday, and he's a small little dude, man. He is explosive, though. He's a 5'7" guy that I think they absolutely have to get onto the field. You made mention he had a 70-plus yard touchdown run. He had a couple of other runs that you just kind of, when they happen, you kind of look at it and go like, okay, this dude can go. And so I do think that he will find his way onto the field.
Tony, defensively, do you think this is a team that can? I mean, they look fantastic at times in stretches last year, and then at times it was like it was different guys, which I think was kind of the story for the team last year. Is this team ready to take that step forward defensively?
That's a great question, and they have to be quite honest, that they are going to have success, kind of what we're talking about here, and get W's. They have to. One of the big themes coming into spring and coming out of spring is that they felt that they may have suffered through some paralysis by analysis last season and got too complicated, and guys just weren't playing and were thinking too much. And I mean, there were some situations last year where we just had, opposing players just dead open. And you're in bad shape, guys, if in fact you were watching it on TV and you don't see the defender when the ball is going. That's a bad day right there. And so we had more of those than you can endure. And I think that they've tried to simplify as much as possible. And I think they feel solid. They do have to go into the portal here. Definitely want to try to do something. Get one more defensive lineman. They want to go back into the defensive backfield to build some depth there as well. And so I think they feel they got a chance, but I think is being more simple this year may be what the route that they're going.
Tony, go ahead, Craig. I'm sorry. Go ahead. The conference is looking at the possibility of going into another time zone. That cannot be popular for West Virginia.
Well, it could if we go east, like Bermuda. I mean, that. You ever thought about the Atlantic? You guys always think it ends at the Eastern time zone. There's an Atlantic time zone as well. It goes back an hour.
Yeah.
So, the whole deal, and we've talked about this in the past, is that the league has been fantastic for West Virginia, with the exception of the travel and the geography, because your closest school up until the newbies come in here has been Iowa State for the last 11 seasons, which is 700 miles away. So I think, guys, that, any time that West Virginia can get someone closer to them and still maintain that Big 12 brand that we know, it's a win-win, because there are so many good things that this relationship has had for West Virginia. These are like-minded institutions that we're playing against. Fan bases, they're like-minded fan bases, very similar. And we did not have that in the Big East days because you had you had your non-football playing schools, you had small private schools intermingled with these other schools that are similar to West Virginia. But, being in a league that's got state land-grant institutions makes a ton of sense. Now, I know the geography doesn't work, but as you guys know, and you guys follow it, very, very closely. Who knows what the next iteration is going to be in conference realignment? You guys have heard the rumblings. Is the ACC or some of the ACC schools, are they ready to test that grant of rights legally? And if in fact they do, and if in fact they can break through, kind of like the scene in Shawshank Redemption where he finally makes it out, if they get out, what's that do to everybody else? What does that do for those that leave potentially? What's that do? How big can this thing become? So it's fascinating stuff. And I understand completely getting a West Coast, the time windows for TV. I get all of that, but, closer better for West Virginia.
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate all you do. Voice of West Virginia Athletics, Tony Caridi, with us on 365 Sports.